Unstructured Data podcast, Meet the Makers series, where we discuss today's most exciting technical developments in generative AI with the people who are building them. This podcast is hosted by the team at Zilliz, the company behind the open source vector database Zilliz. We're passionate about working with unstructured data and love chatting with others doing the same. Be sure to check out our AI Trailblazers episodes for more conversations with AI leaders. Enjoy the show.
Hi folks, thanks for joining us today. Really excited to have Cameron Pfiffer from .text with us, and he's going to be talking about some of the products that his company makes, as well as constrained sampling and structured output, a really important topic. So Cameron, would you like to start off just telling us a bit about yourself? How did you come to be in developer advocacy as well as in this generative AI sphere?
That's a good question. But first of all, hey, Stefan. I think my route was like kind of weird because I'm an economist, so I did my PhD in financial economics. But I've been like kind of playing around in like the generative AI space for maybe a year and a half or 2 years before I got hired by. And so the reason I got hired was I knew Remy and some of the other people. Remy's our CEO. I knew a few other people at .text because they're all like kind of Bayesian statisticians and probabilistic programming people, which is a space that I worked in during my PhD. So Remy had like tweeted, he was like, "We're looking for a developer advocate in San Francisco." And so I like responded, I'll apply. That seems interesting. And then I forgot to send in an application. And then he responded like a week later with the eyes emoji. And I was like, all right, I got to go apply. And I wasn't expecting to be a developer advocate. I don't think anybody is. Like, it's like kind of a job it's a job you fall into because it's a very specific set of skills. It's like communication skills, it's technical skills, and kind of like community engagement and stuff. So it's, I wouldn't have expected to be a developer advocate, but I am now. It's a super fun job. It's, I get to talk to people. I get to show off all the cool stuff we do and things like that. So it's been an interesting job to fall into.
Yeah, totally. So I feel the same way as a developer advocate. It's just really fun, organizing events, creating content, really engaging with users. And I think it's funny, like how you mentioned, so how you got into it was really sort of like, sort of by chance. It really just did sort of like, fall into your lap. So that's really, really cool.
Did it fall into yours too? Did it just kind of like happen?
I would say yes. I was looking at sort of related job titles, and I would say like I didn't actually sort of fully know what a developer advocate was, but the more I learned about it in this current position at Zilliz, the more I thought, well, this is really awesome. So have like aspects of being a solutions architect, but it's much more like public facing. So heaps of fun.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's lots of fun stuff to work on.
Well, talking about fun stuff, so we're actually going to start with a very serious question. Coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee, 100%. I'm of the like Ted Lasso persuasion where like I don't want any of your like hot brown leaf water that you get from the gutter. That's kind of an exaggeration. I do like some tea, like decaf tea in the evening. Like I think that's like really nice. But for the most part, I am very, very coffee guy. What is your answer?
My answer is 100% coffee as well. I think tea just doesn't really do it for me. It's very sort of like, weak. It doesn't have that same kick.
I would agree. It's like having soup for dinner. Like, because soup is one of the least satisfying foods of all time. Soup is more flavorful water, and so is tea. But coffee feels like something.
Yeah, much more substantive. Well, now we've got the serious questions out of the way. Can you tell us a bit about .text, the company you work for? So what do you folks do? Where are you headed? What sort of like challenges are you solving?
Sure. So .text, kind of our mission statement is make AI speak computer. So we provide low nonsense AI engineering tools. And so the primary way that we do that currently is we work on high performance structured generation, which is how you make language models output text that is consistent with a very specific format that you specify in advance. And the big advantage of having tools like this is that you can build reliable, scalable systems with language model output. Put language models inside of your program and use them to build interesting things.
Cool. And so maybe you could talk a bit more about What sort of interesting things can we build with structured output, or why do we need structured output?
So I think that the question as to what you can build is still sort of hard to answer, in part because I don't think people are still trying to figure out what's possible because everything's so new. And the way that a lot of people tend to address this is by using agent frameworks. And so like people are building kind of interesting, miscellaneous enterprise things like talking to legal contracts or code editors and things like that. And these things are all super cool. Like, I love this stuff. And I think the like, especially like Cursor and things like that, as a software engineer, I use Cursor a lot. And I don't know if they use structured generation. It kind of seems like they might because it's, code is very structured and the way that they handle it is very structured. That was kind of a different answer than what I was going to give.
Wow. Definitely hear you. So I guess what how I sort of heard what you're saying was, firstly, we just don't know all the things that we can build yet with generative AI. We're still figuring out that. So I guess maybe thinking about what can we build with that sort of might restrict your imagination at this stage. And then secondly, were you saying also sort of like there are many tools that you may use, Cursor, Perplexity, whatever, probably use these things behind the scenes and you're not even aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a thing that happens a lot. So we make an open source library called Outlines. And a lot of people use Outlines without talking about it. So we have people who work on OCR. Is it optical character recognition? The O is optical, I think. Yeah. And so we have somebody who has this in our Discord who has this really cool, just like very, like a high performance way of describing the documents that you want to see or that you want to process, and you can extract reliably structured information from all of your documents. And people typically do this with like JSON format. And that gets you just, when you have the ability to specify a structure that you can apply to a lot of different problem cases, you can build an entire programmatic ecosystem around the language model output that you have, rather than kind of treat language models as like chatbots, which don't really scale very well. You can't like go to every single part of your program where chatbots are operating and say, nope, sorry, you missed a comma, please remove the comma, or whatever is kind of what a lot of people tend to do now. But
so what I'm hearing is that it's really important, you believe, for like tool usage, and just like sort of prompting an LLM is not sort of like a reliable way to get that guaranteed structure.
Yeah, there's a good meme that came out where someone basically kind of walked through like all the steps that people do to try to get structured output from your model. And it was like, please output only JSON, like only strictly do JSON, or output JSON or you will be fired, or my grandmother will die. And I think we're shifting a little bit away from that because people are starting to recognize that language models are tools. Like they're not, I don't really want to, like, talking to me in natural language is should be the very, very end point of your program. So for example, if you have like a talk to your data program, the thing I want my model to do is prepare a bunch of things like queries, prepare analysis plans, things like that, all of which you can do with structured generation. And then at the very end of that, I wanted to say, look at all the things we generated, and then I can talk with it in like a little chat box. But all of the actual work that's being done should be done with something that you can build reliable code around. Was that your question?
Yeah, totally.
Or did I just answer a different question?
No. All good stuff. So tell us a bit about how does Outlines, what sort of approach does it take to solve this problem?
So we use a method called constrained decoding. Two of our co-founders, Remy Loof and Brandon Willard, wrote this paper about how you efficiently turn off tokens that are inconsistent with your format. So for example, if you want your model to say yes or no, there is a finite set of tokens that will combine to either yes or no. Every other token at the output layer you can turn off because it's not yes or no. Like, you don't want your model to say hot dog if it is only allowed to say yes or no. And so if you have access to the weights for any open weight model, you can just shut off everything that is inconsistent with a format. And so this is commonly called, we call it structured generation. Some people commonly call it constrained decoding, but it's a method that does not allow your language model to output anything other than the format that you specify. Whereas other methods are like fine tuning. So like JSON mode is a fine tune thing. So if you go use JSON mode from some provider, you get something that's fine tuned that may break. You can sometimes get improperly formatted output. And then it doesn't allow you to do things like standard regular expressions. So just making a model say yes or no is actually pretty hard sometimes. You say like, please, you can only say yes with a capital I and no period at the end, just YES. You don't have to mess with that. Like you could just use outlines and you get a yes or a no. Like if you want a simple classifier, very easy to build that. You can also get JSON, which is one of the more powerful applications in my view.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's really cool how, so with this tool, you can sort of turn your large language model into like a classifier or, even like a regression model. So taking advantage of like that massive transfer learning from the scale of the LLM. So I think that's pretty cool. And then these other applications, even cooler. So you talked about generating JSON, very useful for tool usage, of course, and maybe some like information extraction from unstructured data. And I mean, I was just sort of thinking about, I know like sort of one very popular paradigm is instead of sort of like directly calling tool usage, to let the program write Python code and then execute that in a sandbox. And so outline sounds like it'd be perfect for that type of paradigm.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know that I've seen anyone tinker with Python for codegen yet. I'd be interested in seeing that. Program synthesis, I think is kind of what you're describing, is something that personally interests me a lot. And, I think there's a lot of interest in it. The general AGI space, Francois Chollet, is that how you pronounce his name?
I'm not so good with French, I'm afraid.
I hope the CEO doesn't hear this because he's French and I have a lot of trouble with French names. He was a Keras guy, so he did a lot of deep learning stuff. And he went off and founded a kind of a company that was, attempting to achieve AGI. And the big way that they're planning on doing this is program synthesis, which if you have grammars, you can get pretty reliable programs to be generated from your model without thinking too hard about worrying that the syntax is not going to be correct. So it is a technically hard problem to do that, but we work very hard internally on building efficient ways of constraining your model to adhere to a particular grammar.
Where is Outlines headed? Can you able to sort of like tell us about like the roadmap, what sort of features that you want to put in, how sort of like new developments in generative AI are affecting the course of development of Outlines?
Sure. So the big thing that's currently happening is we're getting ready for version 1.0 of Outlines, which comes with a lot of changes. We've recently cut out most of the meat of Outlines into a Rust library called Outlines Core. We found that to be significantly more efficient. So in both compilation time, right? Because when you have a new schema, you have to compile the program that basically turns off tokens. That thing is, the compilation times are way down. I mean, we had like, orders of magnitude decreases in speed by switching to Rust in a few cases. And then so it continues to improve. We're also improving runtime overhead, which runtime overhead now at this point, the cost of applying structured output to your model is at this point negligible. Sometimes we're in the sub-millisecond range.
Sort of like amortize that cost with the sort of like the construction step at the start.
Yeah, the compilation step, right? So there's other tools that do constrained generation, but a lot of them don't do this like the comprehensive full-time compilation ahead of time. So Outlines, the focus that we have is ultra high performance repeated schemas. Yeah. And it's really fast for like one-off schemas too. Like most of the time, I don't notice compilation time anymore. But if you have hundreds or thousands of calls, usually you should just go to Outlines because we just, even if you have a small handful of calls to the same schema, you will get faster general performance. So that's a big one. We're refactoring a lot of the API and kind of slimming it down and focusing more on, kind of the core developer experience. So I'm super excited for that. I've been like kind of following PRs and there's lots of little pieces. So that's the main thrust of what's happening with outlines.
I wanted to ask you about the intersection of vector databases and constrained output. And so I understand like you built a demo last year, presented it at one of our unstructured data meetups. It was really cool. So I wondering if you could just like tell us a bit about what that was and why it's so cool.
Sure. So anytime I go to like a meetup or a talk, with kind of one of our partners in the space, like you guys, I make an effort to showcase how the stuff that we build can interact with the rest of the ecosystem, right? Because that's a large pitch about why you should use constraint generation, because it buys you all of this other software for free. And so the kind of like dorky example I built was this internally consistent self-building lore system. So you describe like a fantastical world. Like somebody, I think during the talk asked for like robot zombies or something. And the way that it worked, it would propose an entry, like a lore entry to go into the universe. And it would build a list of queries. You can basically have JSON that has like list of queries. And then you can embed all of those queries, send them into your vector database to answer, get content related to your question. So standard retrieval augmented generation. Pull those back into the system, and then ask the model to refine its guess about the lore entry that it should inject. So for example, if it proposes something related to some hero, some guy who like fought a bunch of dragons or something, it'll ask a bunch of questions like, who is the dragon? Who is like a good candidate for a hero? And it would get information about all of them. And
I think the dragons are the bugs in Outline, and you are the hero.
That is our wonderful open source team, Victoria and Robin. Robin's actually a new hire, and he's just been like, I don't think his PRs are like bam, 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 bam. He's very effective.
Let's finish off with a call to action. Everyone at home, you sort of learn a lot about outlines. You're really, really excited. How do you get started? What's sort of like a good place to start off?
So there's a few things. One is just go to our library on GitHub. So outlines, it's .txt-ai/outlines. You can also just Google outline Python and you'll find it for us. The next one is our Discord. So our Discord is actually getting I'm really enjoying our Discord. We're getting like a lot of super smart people with like great ideas. So like big props to the Discord folks. We have a cookbook page on our docs that has things like receipt digitization, simple chain of thought, kind of interesting examples like this. And then if you're a person who really likes digging into code, then I would go to our demos folder, our demos repo. And demos has stuff like the lore generator if you want to play with that. It has other stuff that is all very interesting if you want to dig into it.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's some really great resources on the website to get started. A lot of really cool content to start off your journey into structured output.
Can I pitch another thing? Go to our blog. So our blog at blog.txt.co, dottxt.co. That's super technical think pieces. So if you want to see like really like all the stuff that we think deeply about, that's a great place to go.
I do. So I'm going to check it out after the session. But Cameron, it's a pleasure as always to have you on our podcast, and really glad to hear you folks are doing so well. Some exciting things coming up for 2025. So wish you folks all the best.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It was really, really good to see you again, Stefan.
Likewise.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Unstructured Data Podcast. To learn more about Zilliz and start making sense of your unstructured data, grab a free account at zilliz.com/cloud. That's ZILLIZ.com. We'll see you next time.